Welcome to the Flower Essence Podcast, and join us on an exploration of the healing wisdom of flowers.
With combined decades of experience in the study and practice of flower essence therapy, I, Kathleen Aspens, and co-host Rokana Feld guide you to reconnect to nature with these potent vibrational remedies. Welcome again. We're really glad to have you with us. I'm Kathleen Aspens, and I'm with Rokana Feld. And today we're going to be talking about the winter season. We've just passed the solstice, which is the shortest day of the year, or conversely, the longest night of the year, and it puts us firmly into midwinter. And winter is a really good time to be kind of going deep and doing some deeper healing work, doing some reflection, some meditations, anything that helps us find a greater sense of connection to our purpose and direction, and also to make plans for the future. The winter has its challenges. A lot of us are impacted by the shortness of days and the lack of sunlight, and that can cause some issues. We're going to talk about that a little bit, and just talk about what we can generally do to support our hearts and spirits and our bodies through this winter season. It's good to be with you, Ro.
And it's great to be here, Kathleen. This time of year, I really look at it as a time to pause and rest and reset. I think that's so important, especially in our modern day busy lifestyle, where we a lot of us in society kind of keeps pushing us to be as active in the winter as we are in the summer. And yet we are not designed to do that. Our bodies need some rest. We need to hibernate a bit. We need to embrace the silence and the quietness and the darkness again for a time in order to get that deep rest that I think we really need on both a physical and spiritual level. And because of all the darkness and the light, the sun in the sky, being in the sky for such a short amount of time, especially as you said during this when the winter solstice happens, and that's the shortest time of the year to have light, it can definitely affect our mood being in the dark so much, and that can have an impact on our circadian rhythms. And so there is seasonal depression that can happen with a lot of people. And what it looks like and what it feels like is really basically just depression that's has a seasonal onset. So it has all the same symptoms of depression, and it just so happens that winter is usually the seasonal onset that can trigger it, but also other seasons can as well. And just to put a little disclaimer out there, if there is clinical depression happening, the flower essences aren't a replacement for any therapies or things that are being done for that. And so we're not recommending replacing medications or anything like that. Flower essences, the beauty of them is being able to use them no matter what else you're doing for your health and your wellness. So, do you want to dive into talking a little bit about what flower essences we would use for SAD or seasonal affective disorder?
For sure. And like you're talking, the flower essences are beautiful complementary therapy. So no one wants to, we're certainly not recommending anybody do this exclusively necessarily, especially if you have a real long-standing issue or a really profound issue. Getting support is absolutely key. And there are lots of good supports out there for everyone, depending on what your level of resources are or financial reserves. All those things can impact how you can get help, but there is help out there, and we really want to encourage people to get help. Flower essences for the seasonal onset of the blues, we might say, rather than pathologizing things with depression. Everyone feels a certain level of sort of a lowness and a quietness that comes with the winter. And that's not necessarily pathological, just because it is a season that we're supposed to be a little quieter and we're supposed to be a little more reflective and introspective. And what can we do with that quality of the season that's beneficial? Think about my favorite first run at this would be to use the Lighten Up formula from the Alaskan Essences. This one is one that I've used and recommended a lot in the spray version. Especially, I have a client whose husband would not really be interested in taking flower essences, but he likes when she mists him. So she'll just go through the house and just spraying Lighten Up around the house. And she said that it's just absolutely shifted his mood night and day and helped him kind of get off of his depressed state of sort of being on the couch. He was definitely having some issues, and it's really shifted his mood, and it helps everyone in the house when you can go ahead and do that and shift the mood of the one individual, because they all impact all of us. Just being around somebody who's depressed is very hard emotionally to kind of be in that space. So Lighten Up is a great, using the drops, also using the spray. It's good to use both. If you're really struggling, it's really useful to use both. And Lighten Up is built out of essences that in Alaska, they really get seasonal affective disorder. I mean, it's a serious thing there when you only get, an hour or two of daylight a day. So they kind of really know how to work with it. And this formula was created for pretty extreme expression of daylight, lack of daylight. So Lighten Up is a really good one. I've used it quite a lot. And you, Ro, have you been using this one?
Yeah, I do. And I recommend it a lot. Also the spray, the room spray, as you mentioned. I also like the FES Illumine quite a bit. And I really resonate with some of the essences that they've chosen for that formula. Particularly the St. John's wort, the mustard, and the borage. They also include Explorer's Gentian and pine. But I think St. John's wort is just a key for any formula dealing with any kind of depressive state, but not just that. And I like what you're saying about let's stop pathologizing the need to kind of go in and be quiet, basically do some self-reflection, to not be as social, and, honestly, to even eat more carbs. I mean, our body, as long as they're complex and not full of unhealthy sugars, our body needs that during the winter, and it's not a problem, It is especially normal. if you're on a low carb diet. The winter is a time to give yourself a little relaxation in the strictness of that. Absolutely. Also, just along that line, vitamin D. A big part of what can cause the winter blues, as you call them, with less sunlight is that we're not getting as much D3 because of less sunlight. And most people in today's world are already low in vitamin D. I know and I take it and I try to keep my levels up, but that's definitely one that I have to work extra hard to have enough. And I notice a huge difference when I take a high quality D3 in, a significant dose leading up to the winter. It's very, very different than if I'm not supplementing. So it's a really big one, and it's a really easy thing to do. And most doctors, any Western medical doctor is pretty accommodating to just order a test for that these days. It didn't used to be that way, but they all now agree and understand the significance of vitamin D, not just for mood, but for your physical healing and your physical health, and so that you don't get this sick as much.
Yeah, and part of vitamin D deficiency comes from in the wintertime, we don't get much sunlight, and we have to cover our skin as well, because we generate the vitamin D from sun exposure, don't we? Yeah, and so now even in the summertime, it's like cover up and sunscreen, but there's this balance, right? We need to get some sunlight in order to generate this, or we have to supplement with it.
Yeah, very important for the health.
But that's that dynamic of St. John's wort, right?
Yes.
That's what we were talking about, St. John's wort. St. John's wort has that light quality, that light bringing quality. And even if it's not literal light, it's energetic light. It's plant, nature, spirit light that we're bringing in, and we're building that light in our spirit. So it's kind of, it all works together, both symbolically and quite literally as well.
It does. And St. John's wort is another one that's one of those medicinal herbs that is also taken for quote unquote depression. But the energetic of it in the flower essence and the herb as well is really helping to bring the light within and letting that sort of infuse your soul. Kind of builds and fortifies the light structure around you, and helps you integrate both the light and the dark. So it's not about never having the darkness. It's about integrating.
Good point. We were talking a little bit, we referred to that issue of the winter being a time for introspection and reflection. And you're totally right that culturally we really shift away from the shadow. We're uncomfortable with looking at those things. We're uncomfortable looking into the darkness in any real way, because we always want to focus on positive thinking and positive everything. And there's an imbalance that we create, and we're unable to integrate these realities in our life. These realities of loss. Fall is a time of loss, and a lot of times in the wintertime, we're thinking of maybe the years past that were better, perhaps, or we're kind of a little melancholy because we're thinking about our family members who are no longer with us, or relationships, friendships, all these things that are passed away. And being able to sort of be with that a little bit and be able to process it, embrace it, is part of becoming an integrated human being. And being able to integrate both the light and the dark is really valuable in just being a happier person, because it's pretty hard to force happiness all the time. It sort of has to bubble up out. And that's where I see the borage coming in, because the borage gives you that hopefulness. Even though things are tough, it gives you that little buoy. And I find that also the mustard, as part of this Illumina formula, gives that quality of, the visual for me is, we both live in the North Bay area of California, and I live near the vineyards. And in the wintertime, in the very, very early spring, mostly late winter, a lot of the vineyards have mustard growing in the rows, and they bloom bright yellow. It's a sulfur yellow color. And the days that you get a clear sky, it is just spectacular, because the clouds will just clear away and you just get this burst of yellow. And you can feel the energy of that flower, that energy of what that essence comes out of, that burst of yellow, like hope for spring. This is going to happen. And it just whooshes away all of the sadness and the depression and the mud and the bummer of the winter, and brings it into that hope of looking forward.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful sight to come across the vineyards with mustard, or any mustard, in a pasture. Anywhere I see big swaths of beautiful flowers growing together in a rural landscape, it just makes you want to stop your car and take a look, take a picture. It definitely brings a smile to my face when I drive by it, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like I have to talk about orange calcite too. It's a gem essence from the Alaskan, and it is in Lighten Up. But orange calcite is such a great addition to any formula, or just to be using it, because it provides that radiant glow, and it helps to lift and elevate your spirit when you're in that darker place. And you can walk through the darkness, you can process the darkness, you can be part of that, and be able to hold that radiant light in your heart as you move through.
Another one that I would look at as far as the gem essences are gold. Really warm things up and have that kind of bring that feeling of warmth and light into the body. I think that's a great one to ground and sort of synthesize these ones that we're talking about.
Yeah. I'd love to move into a little bit of a next topic over talking about sort of supporting our bodies and our spirits, not specifically relating to the kind of the lowness of the season, but more the energetics of the season and supporting our bodies and spirits in that energetic quality of supporting the kidney. And in Chinese medicine, the kidney is emphasized in the winter. It's a little challenged in cold winters, and just the winter season is a challenge to the kidney. And the kidney is our life force. The health of the kidney organ system determines our length of life and our vigor. And when the kidney is challenged by winter, but also an ongoing challenge for the kidney would be adrenal fatigue and exhaustion. So if your system is constantly overrunning itself and you're maybe using caffeine in order to keep going, or you have a kind of a constantly firing sympathetic nervous system, it's depleting your kidney qi. And so, it's good to get on top of that in many, many ways. And also flower essences can be a help for that as well. One of the first ones I think about is olive, which is one of the Bach essences for building up those reserves. If you think about the image of an olive tree, they grow in very dry, harsh climates. You can see them, very old trees growing on rocks, basically, and yet they produce this extraordinary crop of dark, oily, nourishing fruit. And that's kind of that energy that we nourish our kidneys with that kind of lubricating, moistening, energetic that the olive essence can offer us. Traditionally, Dr. Bach talked about it for being useful for that deep bone level exhaustion. And a lot of people do feel that this time of year because you've run yourself into the ground throughout the most of the year, and then you've really pushed it through the holidays of parties and gatherings and all that, and then you hit January and it's just whump, you've got nothing left. And I think olive is a useful essence for starting to change that pattern. And round leaf vitex is another one that I use for that pattern, especially I see with women, and that's one of my Flora of Asia essences. It's a pattern that women so often do because we're the ones who catch the slack in households and in workplaces. We tend to be the ones that sort of like, well, she'll do it. She'll do the extra thing. And she ends up being on the very last of her to-do list and has done that for years and years and years. And it creates this level of exhaustion. And, in order to get through the day, you got to caffeine up or whatever up in order to get through. And that's a recipe for some pretty serious health and or spirit challenges as you go on.
Talking about the olive, herbally, it's such a potent antiviral and antimicrobial, antibacterial. It's one that's used for Epstein-Barr type issues that are chronic and needing that antiviral immune boosting support. So if that is, and that's what happens to us during the winter, just with colds and flus. So that energetic with olive, I think, translates to the flower essence as well in really kind of giving you that boost that translates to some physical energy when you're depleted.
And the herbal use is a leaf, is it not? Extracted leaf?
Yeah.
Or, okay, yes.
Olive leaf.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, and I mean, olives in their native habitat, the people who live there rely on them for significant nutritional benefit and calories. The olive tree produces that rich oil, which is the foundation of the Mediterranean diet, which has been, shown to be pretty darn healthy. So something else to think about with the olive as being, if that's a partner for you, an essence or an energetic plant partner for you, think about introducing it in a number of different ways in your life.
Yeah. And the vitex, it's interesting what you say about the round leaf vitex, because chasteberry, another name for that herb, and those are the dried berries in herbal medicine, is used for balancing hormonal levels in the women's cycle from month to month. So I like hearing the way that you've translated that sort of energetic with that version of vitex.
Yeah, this is a different species, but they're all part of the same genus.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's when I am excited to try of yours in the Flora of Asia line.
Yeah, and also banyan tree from the Hawaiian Essences of Jane Bell is in a nature essence, so it's made kind of under the umbrella of this beautiful old banyan tree, and the vision of banyan, which is this incredibly buttressed roots, these very strong buttressed roots, and they send out these adventitious roots out along the branches that suck up moisture out of the air, and then will drop down and root into the earth everywhere they are or everywhere they land. And the quality of banyan tree as an essence gives us this ability to root in and ground deeply. And that's part of that energetic of the kidney. The kidney energy is rooting down. It's a very low energy and a grounded energy. And the first point on the kidney channel is on the ball of your foot. So that it's that grounding, rooting quality, and bringing banyan tree into your energetic framework helps you connect to the ground and really get stable and solid and start to really feed and nourish that part of yourself that's required. The adrenal fatigue is energy all rising up, 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 and not staying solid and grounded. So that's kind of an energetic principle to be considering, that when we spend our time all in this hyper adrenalized state, all the energy is rising, to be able to spend time counteracting that by dropping down, by using some acupressure, using these essences to help nourish your kidneys and get your grounding roots into the ground. I know we've talked about grounding before, but this is really specific to the season, and it's really specific to counteracting one of the serious problems of modern life, is to use essences for this. I love to recommend clients I work with to use acupressure on kidney 1, which is right on the ball of your foot. You can find out where it is pretty easily if you do a little Google search. Right on the ball of your foot, and doing acupressure there, putting an essence there, and then doing acupressure with your fingertip can be so good for helping you bring your energies down and grounded and rooted in.
Excellent.
One of the other pieces that is part of this winter season, and we can see it from sort of Western culture, where we talk about making resolutions or setting your course for the next year. It also fits into that Chinese medicine with the season of the kidney, and the kidney is the seat of our wisdom. That's our essence is where our will to live is, and our direction and purpose. And so it kind of all fits together in an interesting way, that if we spend some time in this quiet season, in this like this breathing in time, and thinking about where we want to go with our futures, and by working essences that help to connect us to our inner wisdom and our knowing, it's really a useful use of this. It's a good use of your time this winter. Certainly Serato would be one of my favorites for thinking about this, because Serato gives us this connection to our knowing. The typical Serato state is asking everyone for advice, just going around in circles asking for advice, and then never being able to take it because you're just always asking. You're stuck in the asking. And Serato tells you, hang on, just take a minute and feel into that. Feel into your knowing, and you already know what to do. You don't have to keep asking. What do you think about for the the direction and purpose and this sort of visioning for the year ahead? What sort of essences are you thinking about?
I like still using this part of the time to still do that going within and finding that purpose. And wild oat is another one that is helpful when you don't know, when you don't know what essence to use and you don't know where you're going. So that helps you connect with that knowledge within you, as you say. And once we find what we are wanting to do for the new year, I'm one that has a little bit of a different spin on what happens when January 1st hits. I mean, I don't think that's the time to, okay, now we're going to get up and go and do all these things and change our lives when the calendar flips over.
Yeah.
I think we're still in the middle of winter, and we will be for some time. So we still want to honor our bodies and honor this sort of downtime until more of February, basically, when spring starts to get more of a head. I like what you're saying about having these essences to help us with that visioning and with that connecting to the wisdom of ourself.
Yeah, it's not about, January 1st, you hop out and you join a gym, because we all know that doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Gyms get lots of, you go the first week of January and they're crammed. And then the second, third week of January, things are knocking off. It's not really a great time to start something new necessarily, but it is a really good time to be thinking about what you're going to be doing when you get ready to start something new. It's a good time because there's a certain amount of clarity. I don't know about you, but the first few weeks of January, kind of everybody's hibernating at least a little bit, and your phone isn't ringing quite as much, and there's not quite as many new things that are showing up on your plate. And it gives you a little bit of time and space to tackle a little bit of planning or working some projects that you just haven't had time to focus on.
Are there any others that you like for that piece of it with looking in?
Yeah, absolutely. If we're looking for getting yourself some sort of deep down strength and fortitude. The word I love is fortitude. Penstemon from the Flower Essence Society provides that quality of just digging deep and building on your reserves and strengthening them and being able to focus on what you're heading towards. Even if you're not necessarily moving, it kind of helps when your life has maybe not been easy. And a lot of things have happened that were not outwardly beneficial or very, very difficult experiences. Penstemon helps you connect to the quality of resilience and the ability to take what happened and build something good forward out of it, and finding your strength from your experiences and from the wisdom that you gained out of that experience. I also use Shillong rose a lot, which is a Flora of Asia essence, because it has a similar quality to blackberry, which is another FES essence, because it helps you to sort of dig deep and stick to it. Stick to your plan, stick to your ideals and your goals. And goals are rarely achieved in one day or in one big giant burst of energy. They're usually something you have to really do over time, drip by drip, keep working every day, or, maybe not every day, but in a certain consistency fashion that suits your constitution. But you got to keep working at it. You got to keep showing up, and you got to keep doing the work that you're here to do.
Absolutely. And blackberry as well would be another one to help with that. Also, I like the idea of other roses in general to give us especially wild rose, give us so that we're so easy on ourselves, kind of give ourselves some time for self-care. It's part of that. We don't have to be on a schedule right now, or we should try not to be whenever we get the chance in our schedule to not be on a schedule.
Paradox, is it?
It really is, isn't it? We just live and die by the calendar, by time in our society. But we need to be a little lighter on our productivity, goals at this time of year, and not hard on ourselves for maybe not going to all the social events, or not doing all the things we had in mind, or making all the gifts, or buying all the, whatever it is that the stresses of the season that we're putting on ourselves. We're probably not going to get them all done It's just the way it is.
True. Yes. I always enjoy hearing plans of people. They have these big ambitious plans. I'm taking 2 weeks off and I'm going to write my book. It's like, okay, let's maybe think more about realistic goals perhaps, because that might not happen. And then you're going to be disappointed that you weren't able to do this unrealistic project.
Yeah, it's such a trap, and we all fall into it. I mean, I am very guilty as well of that.
It's
so
true.
I like the rose to just remember that all I have to really do right now is to give myself some love and attention, and to do my own healing and give myself some time for that.
Yeah. And I'm getting this image right now of how beautiful it would be to have a little bowl of dried rose petals on your desk, or even a little sachet, and just taking time to smell them periodically and bringing that energy into, breathing in that promise of summer. Right? Because their season is so alternate, this one. So their energetic is sort of a counteract to the inward drawing sense of winter. So having that quality to help balance that inward dark season with a little bit of remembrance of what the summer is coming to be.
Yeah. And in addition to that, making friends with the winter season and what's happening outside at this time of year. Of course, we're in the northern hemisphere, so it's cold, but all the evergreens are out there doing their thing. And, it's a traditional practice all over the world in various ways to bring evergreen boughs into the home during this time of year. Well, not all over the world, I guess, in the northern hemisphere.
The cold parts.
And especially originating in Europe specifically. So, we have that origin of the Christmas tree. It was boughs of greenery. We have the holly. In California right now, the California holly is fruiting. So there's beautiful bunches of red all through the area where I am. And it's got that great Christmassy feel to it. And, I'll take a little piece of some pine when I'm out walking. I'll do some western red cedar or some sequoia branches, anything that's green, and bring them into the house and kind of get that cleansing energy, that grounding energy from the tree. And there are various specific energetics depending on the tree. But that's another lovely one to have in the home to help with this time of year.
What a great idea to bridge that quality of nature, even if you can't be out in it all the time. And I love that you're talking about noticing things. For me, that's the thing. In wintertime, it creates more clarity. The leaves are not as thick, and you can see more. You can see further. You can see different views than you can see the rest of the year. And I think that principle applies both in reality and also in inner reality. There's less clutter. You're able to see more clearly. And going for walks and noticing the qualities of the wintertime, the branches and the bark and the berries and what's going on in the world in wintertime, even if it's very, very quiet. We're in an area that's a wet, cool winter, but not snowy generally. So we get there's quite a lot of growth and greenery around us. But certainly if you're in an area that's snowy, there's still quite a lot of nature to look at, and there's quite a lot of nature to sort of bring little sprigs of greenery in with you and spend time with them. I love to use, I've talked about pine flower essence so many times, but I think there's a real quality that fits in with the winter. It's about letting go of old things. It's about letting go of old guilt and all the shoulds and the self-judgment and all of the things that we don't like about ourselves, taking pine flower essence is a great way to sort of sweep that clear, in the same way that bringing a pine into the house changes the whole energy, changes the way that it breathes in your space, that scent and the quality. It helps to shift things. And I think that pine as an essence really starts to shift things internally as well.
Yeah, and it's another one that's in that Illumine formula that we were talking of earlier by FES. So it's sort of perfect that it comes around that way. And definitely want to piggyback on what you're saying about noticing, mindfulness, really. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about going within and having sort of a more meditative energy during the midwinter season. Doing a walk is perfect for that, and noticing what nature is doing. It's really great any time of year, obviously, but it gives us those clues about the energy of the season. I mean, more than clues. It's almost, it's very obvious, very obvious for those of us who do this. I love what you were saying about being able to see more clearly and see through all the trees that have lost their leaves. So I'm surrounded by a lot of those. And now I have more of a vision into the evergreens that haven't lost their leaves. And so the landscape is different. And that's one of the reasons why it feels different.
Yeah. And in some level, if you think about it, the what was in the background is now in the foreground. So you can see the trees for the forest, right? So you get a different perspective this time of year out in nature, and then also internally you can see a different quality and a different perspective. Well, before we close up, I want to bring one more essence in that's so much part of the winter season. It's holly, and holly is one of the classic Bach essences for. It's so perfect for this time of year. It's so perfect for all of the gatherings and all of the socializing. Even though we're sort of reaching the end of that season, there's a lot perhaps of interrelationships that we've kind of been recognizing where we have growth points. Holly is helpful for jealousy, for that feeling of not getting enough. I'm not getting what I need. I'm not getting my recognition. I'm not getting my love. I'm not getting all of these things that kind of build up in our heart and cause us pain. It's a form of heart pain, and holly helps us to just expand and breathe into our hearts and recognize that we can get everything that we need. Sometimes we have to source it ourselves. Sometimes we have to set a boundary. Sometimes we have to ask for what we need, which is always really useful to do. But holly brings a certain peace and release to that, where it's not quite so intensely held. It's more of a softening of the heart, where we can really find a way of connecting with our loved ones, our colleagues, our family members, in ways that are new and not based on old patterns.
Totally agree. Yeah, that's a good one to make sure we talk about again.
Yeah. So it's been really nice spending this time with you on this quiet winter day. Well, it may not be quiet on my end. I know my little birds have been singing all along the way. And I think I heard your dog get up and have a nice stretch before she went back on the sofa. But that's the quality of winter. We should watch our dogs. They know what to do. Go over and lay in the sun.
Yeah, I'm ready to get on that couch right there with her.
So thank you for joining us. We've really enjoyed talking about winter and flower essences for winter with you. And we're really glad that you're along for the ride with us. We really encourage you we'll have good notes in our on the website episode page about what we've talked about. So you can always check in if you don't listen to this with a pencil handy. And we just really appreciate the conversations that we're having on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, and just help us by spreading the word and sharing with somebody that you know who would really enjoy this show. It's a labor of love for us. We love to talk about flower essences, and we love to share the healing qualities of nature with you. So thanks for being with us. And it was great spending time with you, Ro.
You too, Kathleen. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Flower Essence Podcast with Rokana Feld and Kathleen Aspens, and we appreciate your interest in connecting with nature on a deeper level. You can find us online at thefloweressencepodcast.com or join us on Facebook and continue the discussion.
This podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are not physicians and do not diagnose, prescribe, or treat medical conditions. Please consult with your own physician or healthcare practitioner regarding the suggestions and recommendations made by the hosts and guests of the Flower Essence Podcast.